You're about to watch one of the most informative Havoc Demon Hunter videos that I have made to date. This bad boy is chock full of tips, tricks, explanations, and reasoning, and if you don't learn at least one thing from this video, then you should subscribe so I can try again next time. Season 1 of Dragonflight has been an absolute banger, and I've been having a ton of fun playing Havoc. Truthfully, I haven't heard many complaints, and that's a major relief considering where we just came from. WoW is finally headed in the right direction, and all they need to do is stay the course, listen to the players, and keep putting out good content, which it does look like they're going to do, judging by the roadmap that they put out a few weeks ago. While there haven't been many complaints, there have definitely been 1,000,001 questions, which is understandable. You know, we have a whole new talent system, a new profession system, a whole new paradigm of gearing up, and to be blunt, a whole new outlook on how to play the game. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the most frequently asked questions that I've been getting over the past month, mostly pertaining to Havoc Demon Hunter, but you can apply these to all types of specs and playstyles. Now, before we dive into the video, I do want to put out a disclaimer and say, well, first, this video is going to be very long, so I'm going to put timestamps below, and secondly, all of this information could change. It only takes a hotfix, you know, a patch, something, one little change to throw everything off. So if you are watching this video in the future, maybe 6 months from now, there's probably more videos that I've put out since with more up-to-date information. But one thing that never changes is the fun you can have with today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. You all have phones, right? Then you need to check out this game. Listen, I've been playing Raid Shadow Legends for a while now, and it's undeniably the best mobile game I have ever played. And it's free. Not only does it look incredible, but the gameplay is so much fun. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of idle games or if you like to play completely hands-on. You can choose to play this game however you want. Lately, I've been having a lot of fun trying to optimize and min-max my team to progress further on the clan boss. There's literally billions of ways to customize and build your champions. This is a rabbit hole you're going to love going down and exploring. Now, let's talk champions. Raid has over 650 of them, and recently they've added a super cool new faction called the Sylvan Watchers. You've got forest elves, you've got scary-looking tree spirits, you've even got living rock monsters. The Sylvan Watchers basically have it all as a faction, so let's find out more about their history within the world of Teleria. Rather than building a sprawling city on the ground or in a cave, the Sylvan Watchers made their home in the Mistwood, a huge jungle in the east of Teleria. Now, don't expect a walk in the park if you try to visit the Sylvan Watchers. If the beasts don't kill you, the Sylvan probably will for trespassing on their land. They do have a city open to outsiders called Nyresa, and they've made fast friends with the neighboring Shadowkin and Dwarf factions through shared struggles. That's why these three factions are all in the Nyresan Union Alliance in-game, as their bond of friendship was forged in the city of Nyresa. The more you know. There's loads of character variety in this faction, with each champion being in tune with nature in a cool and unique way. Some have plants or mushrooms growing off them, while some are even literal trees. To kick off the new year, there's a fresh raid update with a bunch of new features, including a new season of the Forge Pass for all you artificers, the Plarium Points program where you can earn in-game goodies, including a legendary champion, and more. Speaking of champions, there's a whole batch of cool new ones coming this month as well. I can't wait to try them out. And in preparation for Raid's 4th anniversary later this year, this month sees the launch of the humongous 4th anniversary Titan event. This new type of event lasts for several weeks, and will see you earning anniversary points by competing in special themed events. It's not just the length that's titanic though, there are some truly amazing rewards up for grabs for taking part in this marathon event, so don't miss out. Raid's also got something extra special happening right now. They've released a legendary champion based off MMA and pro wrestling legend, Ronda Rousey. Yes, the Ronda Rousey. You can get it for free right now, whether you're a new or a longtime player, just by logging into Raid. All you've got to do is log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and February 20th, and Ronda's yours. That's all there is to it. To celebrate Ronda's arrival in Raid, you can also use a special promo code, RAIDRONDA, available for all users, new and old, to get a bunch of helpful stuff like a 3-day, 100% XP boost, 500,000 silver, and 5 full energy refills, perfect for leveling your Ronda up so she's at the top of her game. Just enter promo code RAIDRONDA in-game and all these goodies can be yours. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, click the link in the description or scan the QR code here on the screen and you'll get $30 worth of rewards. We're talking a free epic champion, Chonaru, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 epic skill tome. Available for 30 days for new players only. Once you claim these rewards, you'll find them in the top right corner of your screen in your inbox. And once you're in-game, come find me under the name Jedith_LC. And if you're fast enough, maybe you can join my clan. Big thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now let's get into it. All right, so the first question, I get asked this one a lot, and I wanted to make sure I included this in the video because I think it could be helpful for a lot of people. Now, I am by no means a Warcraft logs wizard. I know a very few select things to look into, but hopefully this can help you find some information and improve your gameplay just a little bit. So the first thing you can look at is your resources spent. So if you go to resources here, switch hit points to Fury, and then down here, you'll see all your different builder abilities, how much Fury you gained from it, and then right next to it, how much you wasted. So this wasted section is essentially the amount of Fury that you overcapped. Now you want this number to be as low as you could possibly get it. And the way that you keep this low is by actually spending the Fury. So making sure you're using your spenders as much as you can, and keeping this number as low as possible. If you're not using your spenders, you're probably doing not as much damage as you could potentially be, and you're probably tunneling into things like Fellblade or popping Immolation Aura while you're already at maximum Fury, things like that. The other thing you can look at is your damage done. So if you come to the damage done section here, you'll be able to see all your abilities and the breakdown for it, how many times you've casted it, the average hit, the crit percent on each one, etc. Now, this becomes useful when you compare it to somebody else's logs. So for this instance, I decided to use Taros, Heroic Taros, just because it's kind of a simple fight and easy to compare. So I've taken one of my parses here, and I've pulled up the top parse on Heroic Taros, and now we can actually compare the amount of casts between the two logs and see where the difference is, right? So you can see on my log here, I casted Death Sweep 23 times, whereas this top log here casted it 26. So that is the difference here. More Death Sweep casts. Obviously, Death Sweep is our heavy hitting ability. That's going to result in more damage, which means a higher parse. We can see Annihilation, 64 casts. I had 61. And you can check the basic things just to make sure you're kind of on track. So you can check Immolation Aura. See, I casted it, doesn't quite say. It hit 119 times. We'll go to this top parse. His Immolation Aura also hit 119 times. So we had Immolation Aura running roughly around the same amount, getting the same amount of hits. We can see the Hunt was used 3 times by me. He also used the Hunt 3 times. That means I didn't, miss any instances to use the Hunt. Essence Break was used 5 times. I also used Essence Break 5 times. So that's how you can kind of check if you're on the right track, and also if you're missing GCDs or things like that throughout your encounter. One other thing you can do with this is, say we were looking at this parse again, this top parse on Taros, you can switch it to a timeline view, and you're able to see exactly what this person's opener was. So you can see exactly the order that they use their abilities and how it all lines up. So you can also, just compare yours, go to the timeline on yours and compare yours to theirs and see how you're doing, how it's all lining up, and what you're doing wrong. You can adjust accordingly. So that's the most basic way that you can use logs and read them and kind of just use this information to get better and improve your gameplay. Now, this is a great question. I've answered this in a previous video, but I'm going to answer it again because, like with all of these questions, I get asked this one a lot. And I think if you're not doing what I say you should be doing here, you're probably missing out on a lot of damage and you're suffering quite a bit. So how do you maintain damage between Essence Break windows? The most important thing that you need to remember is use Vengeful Retreat between your Essence Break windows. It's going to come up off cooldown. You're going to be able to use Vengeful Retreat again. And this is important because Vengeful Retreat is not only just, giving us initiative, giving us increased critical strike chance and increased critical strike damage. It's also one of our main Fury generators. So you need to make sure you're using that. Otherwise, you're probably just going to be sitting around doing nothing, waiting for Fury, and it's going to feel like you're incredibly slow. You need to make sure you're using Vengeful Retreat as soon as it's coming up off cooldown. And then after that, once it comes back up off cooldown, it should be lining up perfectly with your Essence Break. So that's how you maintain damage in between your Essence Break windows. You also want to make sure that you're pairing that Vengeful Retreat with your hard-hitting abilities, Glaive Tempest, Death Sweep, and just trying to, keep up your momentum as much as you can in between. and having everything line back up when Essence Break comes back around off cooldown. Keep in mind that Havoc is not the spray and pray class that it used to be. You need to be planning your abilities, making sure everything's lining up. Another quick tip is if you are using isolated prey, you can Fel Rush to gain Fury. Essentially, if you're fighting one target, Fel Rush becomes a Fury generator. So just keep that in mind. If you are using isolated prey, if you're fighting a boss or like a single lieutenant mob, you can Fel Rush to gain Fury, and that should help you in between those Essence Break windows. Okay, this one's another great question because it kind of highlights another problem. And that problem being that there is a perception that our single target rotation and our AoE rotation is different when it's not. It's kind of the same thing. The only difference is that in AoE, you can do things kind of not optimally and still get away with it, because with AoE damage, there's just so much pad and the number gets big no matter what. But in single target, if you're not doing things efficiently, if you're not doing things optimally, that's going to really show, because you only have one target to really rely on being damaged the proper way. So you have to make sure you're executing your Essence Break combo the way it should be. Making sure that you're fitting your death sweeps inside of Essence Break. You want to be getting 2 of them inside of your opener with meta. Otherwise, you just want to make sure you're getting 1 death sweep inside of your Essence Break window. Now, aside from that, the one thing you really have to focus on is your uptime. Uptime is king when it comes to single target damage, because every GCD matters. Every single GCD matters. So what you can do to help with that is, if you're doing an encounter, for example, and you have to dodge a mechanic, you want to make sure that you're dodging in a way that you can still keep uptime on the boss, that you're still hitting the boss, and you're still using your spenders. The worst thing you can do is dodge in a way that you're going so far away from melee range that your character just stops attacking. That's just downtime and you're not doing any damage. The more you're not doing damage, the more that's going to be reflected on the meters, and you're going to feel like you're just not doing what you should be doing. So make sure you keep uptime on the boss. The best example I can think of for this is the raid encounter Dathia in the new raid Vault of the Incarnates. There's this one mechanic where she does a suck in, and all the players have to basically run away and run against the wind. What I see a lot of people do, and this is a mistake, is they have their mobility, right? So they Fel Rush immediately away from Dathia, and they go to the very edge of the room. You're dodging the mechanic, but you're also not doing any damage. So what you should be doing in that situation is kind of running against the wind, but running sideways, so you stay in melee range. You can still hit the mob, or hit the boss rather, and you're still dodging the mechanic. I'll see if I can put an example up on the screen so you can see, but essentially you're still dodging the mechanic, you're still running against the wind, but you're still staying close enough to the boss that you can still hit it. These are the little things that make all the difference on the meters. Now, the final mistake I want to address with this question is something that's kind of a relic from Shadowlands, I guess. That was a weird instance back in Shadowlands where Blade Dance and Death Sweep just weren't valuable enough to press in single target. They weren't doing enough damage. They cost too much Fury. The ratio just wasn't there. It wasn't working. That was something very exclusive to Shadowlands. Now in Dragonflight, that problem was fixed immediately on the beta. As soon as we got our new talent trees, with all of the new Blade Dance and Death Sweep talents that we have in our tree, it makes up for it. And those are now our hardest hitting abilities, not only in AoE, but in single target as well. They take top priority, even in single target. The most important thing you need to do is make sure you're getting that Death Sweep inside of your Essence Break. And even if you're not inside of an Essence Break window, using Blade Dance is super, super important. So in AoE, you want to be using both abilities. In single target, you also want to be using both abilities, not just Chaos Strike. Okay, so does external damage from trinkets or procs from gear, procs from weapons get converted into chaos damage by any means necessary? The answer is no, it does not. So anything that you have proccing damage, like your weapons, so you have Stormslash from Not Good Offensive, or you have, I don't know, the ring from Cobalt Assembly that has a damage proc, all that damage, even though it is from a different school of magic, like it says on the tooltip, it's not actually getting converted into chaos damage because any means necessary only works with our abilities. So you'll notice in the tooltip, it says your abilities. That's because it only works with things that are in your spellbook or things that come from talents. Although those things do have the potential to work with the talent Know Your Enemy. So if those procs can crit, if those trinkets can crit, if the, the proc from Stormslash, if it's able to crit, those will benefit from the extra crit damage from Know Your Enemy. So to summarize, no, it does not get converted into chaos damage, but it does benefit from the crit damage from Know Your Enemy. Any specific dungeon drops to use Valor on? Honestly, whatever you can get your hands on, you should try to upgrade if you need it. You want to keep in mind that you want to be upgrading items that you think you're going to be keeping for an amount of time. So if you get a pair of boots and, you might be tempted to put some Valor on them, and that's fine. You can do that, but just keep in mind, you'll probably upgrade them if you get if you're a raider, for example, you might find some better boots and you'll replace those pretty quickly. But a thing like, something like a weapon, you're bound to keep for at least a little bit. Things like trinkets are very, very valuable. In Court of Stars, there's the whetstone. That is one of our best trinkets. So if you can get that, start upgrading that with Valor. Things like the Algathar puzzle box, very valuable. You can put some Valor into that. Things that are kind of more important, you want to put your Valor into those. Ultimately, it's not going to matter though, because there will come a time where we're just going to have so much Valor that it doesn't really matter, and it's not going to matter. It's almost like the dilemma with crafted items right now, right? Like there's not really any wrong answer. There's a wrong answer in the moment, but eventually that's not going to become the wrong answer because it's not going to matter. So there is an efficient route that you can take with it, but ultimately I think you should just spend your Valor on what you need right then and there, and it'll all work out. Don't stress about it too much. Don't think it's a major decision. Spend your Valor how you want. Try to use it on items that you think you're going to be using for a little while. So how to not get quickly tired of our Mythic Plus builds. This is a great question because I know exactly what this viewer is talking about. I know exactly what he means. And ultimately it just comes down to practice and comfortability. The more you play something, the more it's going to become second nature. I know firsthand that when I first started playing the left-right build with Throw Glaive being incorporated in our rotation, it was very, very hard for me to get used to. And honestly, that's how I feel with any alt that I play. I feel if I do a key on an alt, because the rotation is so new, it's so out of my comfort zone, it's actually exhausting by the time I'm done that key. I feel like, I just want to go take a shower or something, but the more you play, the more you practice, the more you just get your fingers used to pressing those buttons in that order, the more it's going to become second nature. You also want to make sure that you're taking the time to learn your abilities, learn exactly what they do, learn all your talents, and understand how they work together. That way, when you're going through a key, you understand things to a point where the decisions that you're making along the way are easy, and you don't have to sit and deliberate on them as much, because that's what's making you tired by the end of the key. You're traveling through this dungeon over the course of 30 minutes, and over the course of those 30 minutes, you are making a lot of decisions. And if you're uncertain about those decisions, it's a lot more taxing on your mental bandwidth. So as things start to make more sense to you, as the class and the spec and the rotation starts to click, those decisions become easier, and you can kind of make them on the fly a lot better. So by the end of the key, you're not as exhausted, and you're just kind of happy you timed the key. Okay, so this one is actually one of my mods asking me this question because he knows it gets under my skin. I'm going to see if I can answer this one without getting too salty. All right, here we go. BiS lists. BiS lists are a thing of the past. Best in slot does not exist anymore. If you follow one nowadays, you could actually end up doing less damage and more harm to your character overall than what you're actually trying to do, right? So BiS lists worked back in the day. For those of you that don't know, BiS is best in slot. BiS lists worked, that's a tongue twister. They worked back in the day during Classic because items only came in one way. There was one version of an item, right? If you got Thunder Fury, you got Thunder Fury. There was no difference in eye level, different difficulty, different, versions of it. There was one version of that item, and if you got it, you got it. That was your best item. Nowadays, it's a little different because we have so many different versions of raid difficulty. We have LFR, we have normal, we have heroic, we have mythic. In mythic, nowadays, there's multiple different tiers of item level. I'm talking in raid at the moment. There's, you know, as you progress through the bosses, the item level gets higher and higher. We also have Mythic Plus, where you have a ton of different variations in item level of a particular item. You know, you could have a pair of boots, for example. I don't know why I keep using boots, but you have a pair of boots that have the exact same name, but they'll range from like eye level 346 to 402, right? And those are vastly different items, but they have the same name. So it becomes complicated to really calculate what is your best item. Now, yes, there may be an ideal setup of what is the absolute best for your character, for your class, for your spec. There might be an absolute best, and those are calculated for a very specific reason. Those character sheets are not calculated and crafted to give to players, to give them a laundry list of items to go hunting for. That's not what they're meant for. What they're meant for is to give the simulations a peak and a limit, like a normalized level, basically. So every class and spec will find their best in slot character sheet that they can then compare against other classes. So it's a much more normalized playing field, right? You need to have sort of a equal level of play when you're simming one class against each other, or one class against another, because there's so much variation between certain items and getting them at a different difficulty. There's way too much fluctuation. Those character sheets are made for that purpose and not for providing you with a laundry list of items to start hunting down and get. The reason those work is because those items work together in that specific combination. If you look at that best in slot character sheet, that again, we'll use the pair of boots. That pair of boots may only be best in slot for you if it's used in combination with all of those other items at that exact item level. This goes back to a video I made a long time ago about stat weights. Stat weights are the worst thing you could look up for your character, because stat weights are a reflection of what the stats are for you with your gear in that moment, right? You could take you could swap your boots. You could put on a different pair of boots that have different stats on them. And putting those on will completely change your stat weights. Stat weights are they fluctuate, they're fluid, and they move with each new piece of gear that you put on. So stat weights, you can't just look at them and be like, okay, my highest weighted stat right now is crit, and then mastery, and then haste, right? You could change your gear around and you end up losing some haste, and then suddenly haste becomes way more valuable to you than it was previously when you had the other gear on, or the other pair of boots on. So gearing is a very, very complicated and nuanced thing in, you know, this day and age in Dragonflight and World of Warcraft. So there isn't just like a straight up list of items that you can go hunting for. There's no BiS list. The best thing you can do if you're trying to find the best gear possible for you is use raid bots. I'll sort of display it on screen here. There's so many different tools you can use. There's, you know, Top Gear, there's Quick Sims, there's Droptimizer, which is kind of the best thing you can use if you're trying to find upgrades. You can search for the best gear possible for you in Mythic Plus, the best gear in Raid, the best crafted gear. It's a great tool to find where your next upgrade should come from. That's what I would suggest using to hunt for gear upgrades. Don't use BiS lists, because you're not doing yourself any good. You're probably doing less damage than you would be if you just got the right pieces. Is there a current BiS weapon for Mythic Plus? Stormslash, question mark? So again, Stormslash is on our best in slot list, because the proc on it does slightly edge out in pure single target. So you get that item at max eye level. Having that proc on it is just enough to edge it out and become, you know, better than the other weapons in pure single target. However, whenever there's a second target introduced, or even more targets, that proc loses value. and a weapon that has proper stats on it, proper like crit mastery or, crit haste or whatever, that's going to be much more valuable for you in an AoE situation, which is kind of a more realistic situation. A Mythic Plus dungeon is not pure single target. There might be some single target bosses, but those bosses are a small fraction of the entire dungeon. And a lot of bosses nowadays will have ads that come out too. So even if it might be single target for a short, a brief period, there's going to be some ads and suddenly it becomes AoE or a cleave. So there isn't a best in slot weapon. Again, like I said earlier in the previous question, best in slot doesn't exist. But Stormslash, technically, if you can get one, is best for single target. But realistically, any weapon that you can get at the highest item level that you can possibly get, that's what's going to be the best for you. So why can I not pull big overalls like I see all the streamers do? Well, this is a complicated question, and I'll try to answer it as best as I can. There's a lot of factors that play into this, but there's a few tips and tricks that hopefully I can tell you that might help you here. Number one, you want to make sure you're lining up your buffs and cooldowns. And I don't mean meta. Well, meta is part of it, but it's not just meta. So you want to be mindful of your trinkets. You want to use them liberally, but also try to have them where you can combine them with other things. Consider like where your group plans on using Bloodlust and make sure you have things ready for it. So be sure to use a damage potion on top of that too. So you want to be combining things together, right? Combining Lust, combining your damage potion, combining your trinket, all of those other things, combine it all together for big phases of burst damage. Number two, enchant all your gear. If you're really trying to do as much damage as you possibly can, be sure you're using rank 3 weapon enchants. Yes, they cost a lot of gold right now, but they're a massive difference. Number three, don't be afraid to get in there. A lot of times you're playing too defensively, right? You may not be right up in the fray of battle, and your AoE abilities like Blade Dance might only be hitting a fraction of the mobs you're currently in combat with. So make sure you're in there, make sure you're positioning yourself properly, and just be aware of your surroundings. Make sure your AoE abilities like Blade Dance and Death Sweep and Essence Break especially are hitting as many mobs as you can. Other than that, there's a lot of external factors that you can't really do anything about. It comes down to the dungeon, the pull size, what your tank is comfortable with, the other DPS in your group and how much damage they're doing. There's so many different things that can, contribute to what that number displays on details at the end of the key. So as long as you're timing the keys, you're having success, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just make sure you're doing the best that you can. The damage at the end of a dungeon, your overall, doesn't indicate how well you played. You could play very, very poorly. You could die a lot. You could miss kicks. You can not get your stuns. But you can do a lot of pad damage on mobs that don't really need to have all that damage put into them. And, you can make all those mistakes and get hit by all that avoidable damage along the way. But then at the end of the key, you have 100k overall on the meters. And no one's impressed. Especially the people that you let down in your group for focusing on the wrong things. So just keep that in mind. Overall on the meters isn't everything. Be smart. Play well. So yes, of course, there is another option instead of Fodder to the Flame. You can use Elysian Decree. I wouldn't suggest it though. The main difference between those two is that Fodder helps you in single target and in AoE, and it has a defensive aspect to it. Elysian Decree does a lot of good upfront burst damage, but it's completely and utterly useless on single target. So you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons. Again, this is something that you might be enticed to do because you think upfront burst damage is going to get you that high number on the overall meters, but you have to play intelligently. You have to take the things that are going to help you the most and kind of suit more applications than just one. So Fodder to the Flame works great in AoE single target, and it helps you heal. And I get how Fodder to the Flame can be kind of annoying to play with, but I can give you a few tips to make it easier. The first one is that you don't have to kill it with a Glaive. A lot of people think that because the Glaive one-shots it, that's like the only way to kill it. That is not the only way to kill the demon. You also don't have to kill it right away. As I mentioned previously, the demon actually heals you for quite a bit of health, so you can kind of game that to your advantage. And if you have a demon coming out and there's a predictable amount of damage coming from the boss or, you know, Mythic Plus or whatever, you can hold off on killing the demon until that damage goes out, and then you kill the demon and you get that health back. So it's something you can kind of plan around. But yeah, the demon does not have to die by a glaive. It can just die passively from your other cleave, like your eye beams or your death sweeps. If you do decide to kill it with a throw glaive, you can time that as well with your upcoming damage windows. Like if you have an essence break window coming up, you can time it so you get that demon soul and stack it on top of your essence break window for that extra 20% increased damage. You also don't have to kill the demon directly with a glaive. The glaive can bounce from another enemy and hit the demon in its ricochet, and the demon will die from that as well. You don't have to directly target the demon to kill it. Unfortunately, there is no macro, there is no easy button to kill the demon with a throw glaive. A lot of people ask for one. There just isn't one. The best thing you can do, and this honestly works just as well, is to make a MOUSEOVER macro. I'll put a link to what this looks like in the description below, but essentially it's going to follow your cursor. So whatever your cursor is hovering over, you'll press the button and it'll throw the glaive at that thing that your cursor is over. This means you don't have to swap targets. You don't have to press tab, or you don't have to click on the demon to swap targets, throw the glaive at it, then swap back to your previous target. You can stay on the one target, on the boss or whatever it is, just move your cursor over the demon, press the button to throw the glaive, and you're not swapping targets at all. How do you get your Metamorphosis to cast without showing the circle? So this is a pretty basic one. I kind of forgot that other players didn't know about this, but essentially it's a @player macro. So you can create all types of macros. You can do @player, you can do @cursor, you can do @target. But essentially what this is @player. So you're just casting, it's bypassing the targeting reticle of Metamorphosis, and you're just casting it right where you're standing. So this is actually pretty crucial to getting that second death sweep inside of your essence break window. You're going to need this if you're playing with any amount of latency. You want to make sure that you're using this macro in your opener, and it cuts back on like half a second roughly, and that's going to allow you to much more easier get that second death sweep inside of your essence break window. So I'll put the macro in the description below, and you can copy paste it into your game. And yeah, you just have to press the button once and you meta on the spot. Easy. So this one gets asked a lot as well. When you're playing Essence Break with Shattered Destiny, do you hold I-Beam for Essence Break, or do you hold Essence Break for I-Beam? The answer is yes and no. When playing with Essence Break and Shattered Destiny, meaning you have Cycle of Hatred as well, right? I-Beam is going to come off cooldown before Essence Break does, because you're reducing the cooldown of I-Beam with your abilities through Cycle of Hatred. There's a simple rule that you can follow that should keep things synced up pretty nicely. If I-Beam comes off cooldown and Essence Break has more than 8 seconds left on it, you should use I-Beam. You'll have enough time to get it off cooldown again, roughly around when Essence Break is coming off cooldown itself. Now, if Essence Break has 8 or less seconds on its cooldown, you should hold I-Beam. You'll likely stay in Demonic anyway as you're waiting, so there's no harm, and this will guarantee that you stay in Demonic for the entirety of your Essence Break window when you get to it. So I'm going to take this question as an opportunity to fully describe to you how you should be using Throw Glaive and Soulrend in your rotation. If you've taken all the Throw Glaive talents, Throw Glaive actually moves up pretty high on the priority list in your rotation. For single target, Blade Dance and Death Sweep are top priority. Throw Glaive does take priority over Chaos Strike and Annihilation, unless you are inside of an Essence Break window. In that case, Essence Break, you want to be using the abilities inside of Essence Break that it empowers, right? Death Sweep and Annihilation. Inside of Essence Break, you still want to be using Annihilation. Outside of Essence Break, you want to fill with Throw Glaive instead of Chaos Strike. Now in AoE, Blade Dance and Death Sweep still take top priority, but Throw Glaive takes top priority over Annihilation, even in Essence Break. So that doesn't mean that you stop doing your Essence Break window. It just means that after your first Death Sweep inside of your Essence Break window, at that point you want to be switching to using Throw Glaive. Now when it comes to Soulrend, there's a common misconception about how this works. You can't overwrite it, you can't extend it, you can't clip it. It doesn't work like that. All you can do is add to the damage. I'll give you an example. So a Moonkin spell, Sunfire, does a set amount of damage over 18 seconds. You cannot increase the damage it does, you can't extend it past 18 seconds, all you can do is refresh the duration back up to 18 seconds. Now, I'm not including pandemics for the sake of easy explanation. Just roll with me here. The difference with Soulrend is that the damage the dot does is dictated by how much your throw glaive does. It will do the appropriate amount of damage over 6 seconds, but if you cast throw glaive again while your current Soulrend dot is still going, it takes the remaining damage from the first dot and adds it to the damage of the second dot and applies it at 6 seconds. So this essentially means you don't have to monitor Soulrend. It's going to be doing the damage no matter what. You can't, extend it. You can't, upkeep the dot further to do more damage. It's a conversion, right? The more damage you do with throw glaive, the more damage your Soulrend does. It's not something you have to worry about. You don't have to set up a plater profile. You don't have to track the debuff. You don't need a weak aura. You don't need any of that. All you need to do is press throw glaive, and that's it. Okay, I think we're going to end the video here for the sake of brevity, because this can go on forever. I have a lot of questions banked that I would like to get to at another time, another place. I'll make another video perhaps going over some of the other questions, but these were some of the more pressing questions that I get asked all the time in my Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, you can find a link to it in the description below. There's a fantastic community, essentially. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a fantastic community that we've fostered over there. So if you're looking for help with Havoc Demon Hunter, you have some questions, you're looking for some help or just some cool people to talk to, stop by the Discord, check it out. We have cheat sheets for builds, pinned weak auras, a whole bunch of stuff, chock full of information. Go check it out. Link is in the description. If you found this video useful, give it a like, sub to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.